Welcome to Tips, the Townsend Institute podcast series, a show produced by the Townsend Institute at Concordia University Irvine. This podcast shares stories of leadership, coaching, and counseling experiences that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, who then provide tips aimed toward helping listeners grow in both their personal and professional lives. I'm Dr. John Townsend, psychologist, organizational consultant, and author of over 30 books, including the New York Times best-selling Boundaries series. I'm also the founder of the Townsend Institute, and I'm excited to introduce your podcast hosts, Dr. Ashlie Andrew and Dr. Gilbert Puget.
I'm excited to interview my friend and colleague today, Dr. Ashlie Andrew. She is the director of the Masters in Organizational Leadership program at the Townsend Institute. Honestly, though, the role she enjoys the most, I know, is the co-host of this wonderful podcast. So growing up in Southern California and now moving all the way up in Northern California, she's been a leader in many different facets, and personally and professionally. In this week's interview, we will learn more about how Ashlie has presented and researched the topic of she-cession and the maternity leave re-entry. She has extensive experience in this area because, having a growing family, she has navigated through this herself. Along with a PhD in crisis communication, which I know she uses at home and at work, I'm honored to chat with my good friend and expert about the world of maternal leave re-entry. Let's go for it. All right, Ashlie, it is great to see you today. I'm so excited. You are on the other side of the table here as we interview you about maternal leave, re-entry, she-cession, all of these important topics. And I just want to know, kind of, how has your education experience brought you here to TI, and why is this interesting to you?
Oh, well, thanks, Gilbert. I'm excited to be here. And it feels a little different to be on the other side of the interview table, so to speak, but certainly excited to kind of talk about this topic, as you and our team knows that it's something that's pretty near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to kind of share it with our listeners today. I guess just a little bit about my background and what brought me here, not just our interview table, but to my role as co-host with you of our podcast, my role in Townsend. I've been with Concordia University actually for well over a decade, about 14 or 15 years now, in a variety of different roles. I have a background in communication. So I actually started at Concordia on our main campus in beautiful and sunny Irvine, California, teaching a lot of undergrad classes. I taught public speaking and interviewing and journalism and helped with the student newspaper and so on and so forth, which was a great start early on in my career. And then as I kind of went back to school and made the transition up here to the San Francisco Bay Area, as you mentioned, I started getting more into kind of the organizational leadership side of communication. And that eventually kind of opened a door for me over here in Townsend. And I was able to come in and teach some classes and help out with some things here and there. And I find myself now in my director role, teaching and working alongside you and our other fine folks. So that's just a little bit about my background. Over the years, I've just taken much more of an interest in, women in leadership, the rise of it, the blessings, but also the challenges that come with that. And of course, the topic we're going to talk more about today, which has to do with the maternity leave and re-entry into our organizations.
That is true. You've had quite a journey, because you were here and doing all the on ground, and then you moved, and then it was like, hey, you did advising. You advised for a while too, and taught, and so you've got a lot of different skills. I think this is great. So as we're thinking about it, though, what got you interested in the topic of maternity leave and reentry?
Honestly speaking, just my own journey, my own personal experiences. And those I've had watching my friends and family members all navigate the same thing. As you mentioned, I'm, obviously an employee here of Townsend and Concordia University, but my most prized vocations are, wife and mom, and became a mom now about 6 years ago. So I have a 6-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. And so I've lived it, and I've lived it pretty recently. So just my own experiences navigating the maternity leave process, the re-entry back into the workplace, so to speak, watching members of our team do it very recently. And as I mentioned, some of my friends do it in their various industries. So that's really kind of what got me interested. And as I, kind of dove into the research, I said, wow, I mean, we're really in uncharted waters. Really, I think of three major changes. One of which is, according to some recent research, some may not know, but the median age of US women giving birth now is 30. And that's much different than it's been in the decades past. I mean, we go back several decades and it was 22, jumped to 24. I think at the last census, it was 27, and now we're up to 30. And so you just have women having children later into their lives. And the domino effect that has, what that also means is if you think of it from a workplace or organizational perspective, the leadership role or lack thereof of a, say, 22-year-old is going to be much different than maybe a 30-year-old, 35-year-old. We hear of people having kids regularly now into their 40s. So their roles in the workplace are different, which means that their leave and reentry processes may be different as well. So that median age piece, the leadership roles, we know also from the research, women are earning more degrees across the board now than men. This is at all the levels, bachelors, masters, terminal degrees. So with those advanced degrees are oftentimes going to come advanced leadership roles in organizations. So there's a big impact there. And so then the third piece, I think, that's changed a lot that we can't really parallel from decades past too, is just the landscape of organizations and how we work and when we work and where we work, right? This whole idea of hybrid and remote workplaces was a completely foreign topic decades ago. And now it's pretty common and it's a mainstay. And I think a lot of people know it's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Ashlie, you make a great point. I mean, so many points. I just think about, that's amazing that 30 is now the average age, because that is, you're a very different person at 22 than you are at 30 and are different in a different career space. And I just think about, the emotions that go into reentry and leaving your child, especially with childcare, and now the hybrid part of where maybe you can do that more. So that's going to be interesting kind of to dig into more of this thing. So, but as you studied this topic, what's one thing that you have rethought about maternity leave and reentry after going through it and researching it?
Oh man. Well, going through it, it's hard. I guess that's my first thing. Of course, it's an amazing blessing, right? That first and foremost is an exciting thing. Anytime you have the opportunity to, bring a child into this world, whether it's through, natural birth or adoption or surrogacy or you name it, it's such an exciting time for people to be able to grow their family. And so I think first and foremost, listening and hearing some of the stories that I have over the years from women and men as well, right? There is obviously a whole, paternity leave aspect to this story as well we could get into. It's exciting. It's exciting to hear about their journey and what brought them to that point. So that's an exciting piece. I think really the most interesting thing I've rethought or perhaps learned is that it's just not a one size fits all. This is such a unique experience, and it's never the same experience for any woman, any family. There's just so many moving parts that make it a unique experience. And I think that's where it kind of ties into this whole idea of organizations trying to recognize that and trying to find that fine line between. There are laws and regulations surrounding this, of course. I mean, we've got federal laws, you've got state laws. There's a lot of regulations around this, but at the same time, not every situation is the same, right? Not every pregnancy is the same. Not every childbirth is the same. Not every, as we call it, the fourth trimester, which is kind of your postpartum maternity leave time. None of that's the same. And one of the concepts we've come across in our research is this whole concept of the fifth trimester, now they've named it, which is the re-entry to the workplace, right? So you have your your 3 trimesters that a woman typically carries the baby. The 4th trimester is that postpartum maternity leave time. And then the 5th trimester is how that re-entry into the workplace happens. And it's just so different for people involved. It's different by industry. I mean, when we're talking about, those that might be in more of a blue collar service type industry versus those that are, maybe working from home behind a computer, those whose, jobs require them to travel, right? It's going to look so different depending on the woman and the family involved. So I think for me, that's been the most eye-opening. And again, just really the lack of examples we have from the past to kind of glean. I almost feel like we're kind of, building this boat as we sail it kind of deal. Because, decades ago, we gleaned so much from our families, right? From our moms, from our grandmothers in terms of motherhood and how to live our lives as well. But decades ago, you didn't have as many women in the workforce is one, right? Just the statistics were a lot lower. 2, you didn't have the women in the leadership positions that you have today. And as I mentioned before, 2 or 3 decades ago, you didn't have a woman who had a sleeping baby in one room who was on a Zoom call in the other room, which is what I'm doing right now. So we don't have a lot of examples to kind of take from maybe those earlier generations. So we're all trying to have to figure it out right now. And what works for one family and for one family structure might not necessarily apply to another.
As we're thinking about how this plays out for all these different women, the leadership roles, right? Because I know you once they get off that track, then it's harder for them to come back. And so this research, how do you incorporate this research and what you've learned into your teaching, or can you?
Yes and no. I would say that, this particular topic, probably more conversations have been had in a lot of kind of one-on-ones with our students. I've had quite a few conversations over the past few years with our new mothers and even new fathers about this topic. But it does play in under this larger umbrella of really just organizational culture and the study of that. And that, of course, is one of the classes we teach in our leadership programs. And one of my favorite to teach is this idea of org culture. And I think this topic, very clearly falls under that umbrella. So we're able to talk about some examples and also bring in some of the research as well. I mentioned earlier, just the age of women having children being later. We talk about this whole idea of motherhood deferred. Women are kind of deferring that maternal role until later in life once they have their education and their career kind of in line, and then they go into that maternal phase. We've been reading a lot, especially the last 2 or 3 years, on the she session, right? And just the amount of women that are leaving the workforce. Because you brought it up a little bit before, things like childcare, the cost of living, and really having to run the math and do the numbers on, does it make sense for me to work? And if so, how much and where, due to some of the rising costs. And so, and while women are obviously playing a bigger part in, we see a lot more dual income households today than ever before, a lot of still the childbearing and child rearing responsibilities fall on the woman. And so, especially since COVID, there have been more women that have left their workplaces as compared to males. And again, there can be a variety of reasons why that is. So topics like that certainly find a way into our conversation. In our programs, we have quite a few students that are in HR or HR related roles, right? Human resources. So we get in the topics of, you've got to have a procedure or a system for how to handle some of these things. But then again, also recognizing that not all situations are the same. So I think that's kind of how it goes in. Again, a lot of one-on-one conversations. We've been blessed to have quite a few new moms in our program over the last couple years. So it's been exciting to kind of walk alongside them in their journey as they are, working on a master's degree, but also this new role as mom. So that's been fun. We've seen it on our own team as well, right? Something's been in the water at Townsend the last few years. It seems we've had quite a few babies being born, which is an exciting piece. So again, a lot of it falls under just that larger umbrella piece of the culture of an organization, and how you think about topics like maternity leave and reentry, and then how that's communicated and played out.
I love it as we're thinking about the new moms and the programs, and this is not what I'm saying all students need to do, but I had a student last semester had her baby, and the baby was early, it was an NICU, but then she came to class like that night, and I was like, what are you doing here? She goes, well, I was feeling pretty good, and I decided I'd pop in. And I was like, stop, no, you can't be here. So I mean, you can, but you didn't have to. So that
actually is a perfect example about how every situation is unique, because I have actually seen and read that a lot. We've had I know a lot of moms who have been itching to go back to work or to some semblance of it, because they just need that, right? They need to exercise that part of their brain, or they just need that that adult community, right? Or they just need to be able to have a different type of interaction. It's just kind of interesting how it hits everybody so differently. So that's a great example. And wow, kudos to her. I sure hope you gave her an A.
Oh yeah, she was a fantastic student, and she just went above and beyond. She works at a church, does a great job there. So, and then there's some aspects I noticed that like Concordia just bought this new building. As we were touring it, they had a mother's room, and the women there go, finally, thank goodness, that this is a great thing to have. And I didn't even think about that kind of benefits. So there's some things there that now hopefully more organizations are starting to think about as they're building and designing buildings and stuff.
Well, and they have to. So that's a perfect example. That's actually a law now. So you do have to provide a room for women to be able to pump or express their breast milk. There's a lot of laws between the size of that room and some of the things it has to have, having, refrigerator, things like that, to be able to store it. So like I said, there's a lot of laws and regulations, both at the federal and at the state level. So organizations just need to know them and stay up to date with them, because that's been really interesting. I've been in this research now for, only about a handful of years, or I guess maybe 6, as I said before, when I became a mom, and I've seen so much change just in those 6 years. Yes. So it's a moving target, and it's a lot for organizations to have to stay knowledgeable about. It's a job in and of itself.
Absolutely. So there's a lot here. Why is this important for our listeners, in particular our organizational leaders, to know about this subject?
Honestly, just really because this isn't going anywhere. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. I sure pray and hope that we're not losing any, women in our workplaces, or more women in our workplaces and women leaders anytime soon. And so again, as perhaps that maternal age, median age continues to rise, as women's leadership roles in organizations continue to rise, I think we're just going to see more and more cases of when, maternity leave and reentry needs to be navigated. I mentioned before the laws associated with it, but our HR departments, are they ready? Are they staying up to date? Do they know the laws, the systems and procedures? And not only that, is it being communicated to the employees? That's where a big breakdown has come. And I think that's where my background in communication, I have such a passion for this, is so many of the organizations out there, they have wonderful systems, wonderful processes, wonderful plans in place for maternity leave and reentry, but a lot of the times the employees don't know about it. And so where is that communication breakdown happening, and how can that be resolved? Is that, what level of the leadership, helps to bridge that gap? And for a woman, you have a due date, but as you mentioned with your student, that due date is a guess of when your baby is going to come. So babies that come earlier, or perhaps, are late, or might have complications, and the mother and child has to perhaps be in the hospital for longer. All of these things impact what that maternity leave and reentry experience might look like. And so I think for our leaders, and I think this is how it ties so well into what we do at the Townsend Institute and really encourage, is a lot of emotional intelligence, yes. a lot of listening to employees, and absolutely knowing the laws and procedures. And I get you have to stick to that, but at the same point, you have to be willing to perhaps meet the employee where they are and see what you might be able to do to help them and their family at this time. I love that we're researching more and designating these kind of family-friendly workplaces. That's becoming kind of a trigger word we're seeing in some of the articles and research. And I think this plays into that, right? It's first and foremost being excited and being there and in support of a woman and her family during this just life-changing time, right? But being able to work with them for perhaps what they need, right?
Yeah.
So that they can be the healthiest and best, and in turn, that's then going to show up in the organization when they do choose to come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about, as you're describing this and what, people need, women need as they're returning, or men as they're returning to the workplace, the relational nutrients, right? The Q1, the attunement, the containment, a lot of days. I mean, I know all your children are perfect. You don't have any issues, but mine sometimes give me problems. And so, especially our middle child, and when we had her, and so we thought we were great parents. We had the second one, and I love her to death, but yeah, she made us work for it. And so yeah, we need these relational nutrients, and certainly as leaders, I think you made a great point that, we need to embrace and be able to have these conversations. We're getting to the part now where we talk about our favorite part here. What is your one tip for listeners to take away from this topic today?
Oh man, I always love our Townsend Institute podcast takeaway tip. Oh man, there's so many good things I love to share with the mothers and the organizational leaders. Honestly, I think it just goes back to everybody's experience is unique. I think that's the big one. And I think if we can own that and again, really support families in the situations that they're in and kind of the hand that they've been dealt when it comes this way, everyone's going to be a lot happier and a lot healthier. So again, practicing that emotional intelligence, those relational nutrients, and really first and foremost, that empathy, right? That comes with such an exciting, life-changing experience like motherhood, maternity leave, re-entry, all that fun stuff. Every experience is different, and therefore it needs to be treated differently.
Great tip. It's different, celebrated, but then, be there during the good and the hard parts. So, well, thank you so much, Ashlie. I have learned a lot today, and I know this is going to be a topic that is going to really resonate with so many of our students, our listeners out there, professionals, our leaders, and what they need to know about this. So.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
If you enjoy the Townsend Institute podcast series, head to our website at cui.edu/Townsend to find out more about the certificates, bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees offered through Concordia University Irvine. With programs in mental health counseling, executive coaching and consulting, and organizational leadership, we have a variety of faith-based programs dedicated to helping you fulfill your academic and professional goals, all the while furthering your competence, character, and connection. Again, that's cui.edu/Townsend.